Welcome to another edition of Fantasy News. I am your host, Daniel Greene, and today let's just go ahead and jump into the two biggest stories right off the bat, starting with Billy Zane's recent comments on the upcoming Wheel of Time adaptation and the possibilities of him reprising his role. Billy Zane was on a panel at a convention where he was asked about his role in Winter's Dragon. He kind of just briefly went over what the Wheel of Time is as a fantasy series and flat out addressed the fact that this Winter's Dragon was a placeholder, something to reserve rights and nothing more, not meant to be anything else besides a 25-minute pilot to meet contractual obligations. Beyond that, he said he possibly has the right to reprise his role, the option to come back. Whether or not this is true or Amazon would fight it, I cannot comment on. It was said it's possibly true. I can't dig into it any deeper besides taking the actor at his word. But what I will say here, and might go against what a lot of people believe or think or I see all the time online, I wouldn't hate him for the role of Ishmael. I would be fine with it. Billy Zane is a good actor. I understand, though, the mentality many fans do have for the Wheel of Time of wanting everything that was associated with Winter's Dragon to stay as far away from their new TV show as possible. So I get that. But if it's true that Billy Zane is a big fan of the series, I would hate for him to have the opportunity to be a part of this project completely stripped away from him just because of some negative resentment left over for something he was involved with, possibly for a paycheck, possibly because he does love Wheel of Time and was excited at the idea of being involved with it. So with all of that being said, I will go on the record in saying no, I don't hate Billy Zane, as many people seem to for this weird reason. He's a very good, renowned actor. I wouldn't be horribly upset to see him back involved with the Wheel of Time in the future. I do, though, understand where people are coming from and don't blame them for wanting to pull back from Winter's Dragon. Everyone in this argument has an understandable place they're coming from. I just don't know whether or not what he said is completely accurate, and I cannot give any more information aside from that. But moving on from that news to the next biggest bit of hardcore fantasy news we had today, George R.R. Martin went on the record and says that the Winds of Winter might be released before or during July 2020. Of course, every single Game of Thrones fan collectively said this.
I don't believe you.
I do not know, once again, anything more than what is surface level in the article here, but I can give you from my own experience and so far familiarity with covering the news and releases like this, once an author is going on the record and saying things like this, you can pretty much take it that, okay, this is a reasonable time frame, and I would take it with a grain of salt that it could possibly be a month later or a month earlier. I know George R. R. Martin has gone on the record and said he would also release books before, and they didn't get released years after, in fact, this one itself. But this feels to me like George R. R. Martin might actually be wrapping things up and have Winds of Winter ready for release. This does officially mean, though, if this release date is accurate, it will be 9 years between the last A Song of Ice and Fire release and this one. My God, though I do actually believe this is an official release date, I think George R. R. Martin does have it lined up. This is just a gut feeling. I've seen a lot of stuff these last couple of months wise. I would hang my hat that we will have an around July release date for Winds of Winter. But transitioning out of hardcore fantasy news, let's go ahead and start covering adaptation news, which I know many people here are getting a bit overwhelmed by, but I'm gonna keep plugging through. But before we get into it, if you would like to help support Fantasy News directly, go ahead and join the Discord server, hit the Fantasy News channel, and post any stories you'd like to see covered there, and I will try to get to them. Or you can direct message them to me on Twitter, though I am less likely to see those. We had a trailer drop for Gretel and Hansel, not Hansel and Gretel, it's reversed, and here's that.
A fairy tale has a way of getting into your head, even before you hear it. Somehow you just know it. And it always went like this. Pleased to make your acquaintance. I'm called Gretel, and this rough one here is my brother Hansel.
Apple TV dropped its first what looks to be fantasy TV show trailer, C, starring Jason Momoa.
Centuries from now, almost all humans have lost the ability to see. Some say sight was taken from them by God.
And the final Dr. Sleep trailer has been released, starring Obi-Wan Kenobi.
When I was a kid, there was a place. A dark place. They closed it down and let it rot. But the things that lived there...
I still find it strange that Disney decided to lend Obi-Wan for this movie, but hey, you know, whatever sells tickets, I guess. That wasn't a funny joke, but I made it. And in a clarification I wanted to add, but was too busy failing being funny to do, is that Dr. Sleep is supposed to be considered a canonical continuation of The Shining. Yes, a studio is trying to make a sequel to something that is widely considered one of the best films ever made. Certainly a daring endeavor, but I really love Ewan McGregor. Here's hoping it even slightly lives up to the Jack Nicholson, Stanley Kubrick iconic masterpiece that is The Shining. The Joker is getting universal praise from its premieres and has already won a couple of awards. This is of course amping up the audience for a wide release like crazy, and millions are sitting on the edge of their seats at the opportunity to see what Joaquin Phoenix could bring to this iconic villainous role. What we do know so far from the reviews and what's been released, this seems to be a much more real and gritty take on the origins of the Joker, truly embodying this broken mind and messing with what is reality and what is delusion. I'm very excited for it and expect a review for the movie on this channel. And in the only two bits of MCU news we're going to cover here today, Ghost Rider is rumored to join the MCU in Phase 5, and Haley Steinfeld is rumored to star in the upcoming Hawkeye miniseries on Disney+. I always want to say her name, Haley Seinfeld, which is not right, and would be a very, very different show. For those of you unaware, a new Stephen King novel has debuted, The Institute, and it has already been picked up for a series adaptation. My God, Stephen King, I am floored by what percentage of these adaptations I'm reading about are Stephen King adaptations. Jesus Christ. Apparently a Tank Girl reboot starring Margot Robbie is in the works as well. I don't know anything about this character, so I can't really speak on it beyond neat. Hope it's wacky. And in the final bit of fantasy news we're going to cover here today, Alexander Skarsgård has been cast in the Stand adaptation to play the iconic, infamous, oh so dangerous Man in Black, aka Randall Flagg. This adaptation has had several notable names attached, including Whoopi Goldberg, Greg Kinnear, Amber Heard, and even James Marsden, which is truly a remarkable cast. I just find it interesting to me to think back in the days in Hollywood where working on television was seen as lesser to being in the movies, but now that seems to be slowly but surely reversing, as we're seeing TV shows getting these monstrous budgets and incredible casts helmed by great directors. It's a shift I don't think anyone was seeing coming, but Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad and several other notable entries have kind of sealed this truth where TV is just as respected as the movies, if not even maybe a little bit more so in some ways. A weird note to end fantasy news on, but one I will end on nonetheless. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Fantasy News. Like and subscribe if you have not already, and hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. Have a good one, y'all. Peace! And of course, I need to record a special shout out to my latest high tier Patreons. Maverick Smith, thank you oh so much, and Alice Filan. I'm gonna go with Filan on this one. Thank you so much for your latest high tier donations. You guys are amazing, and you will be getting writing sooner rather than later with the whole starting YouTube full-time thing. And another special shout out, redo, for Jay Lan, or Jay Lane, I'm not sure which. because I messed it up in the last one, and now it's done right. With one of those two, I hope. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.